Here I'll show you how to do foundation paper piecing the traditional way with sewing through paper. In your pattern are the templates with letters and numbers. We start with number 1 and you need to place the wrong side of the pattern against the wrong side of the fabric. Make sure that the fabric covers all of 1 and about 1/4 inch larger. I use a glue pen, but you can also use a pin if you prefer that. Use a little bit of the glue pen and then glue your template to the fabric. The fabric glue pen is just a temporary glue and it sticks nicely to the paper. Now grab a postcard and fold your sewing line. That's the line between 1 and 2. This is the first line that we will be sewing. Fold back part 2 and cut back a seam allowance of 1/4 inch. I'm using a ruler and a rotary cutter. Now you grab your fabric for number 2. The fabric for 2 has to be again about 1/4 inch larger than number 2. Place the fabrics right sides together this time and align the raw edges of the seam allowance. This will be your stitching line all the way through the seam allowance of your pattern. Stitch all the way through the seam allowance along the line between 1 and 2. I'm using a small stitch length, 1.2 or 1.5. This way your paper will be nicely perforated, which will make taking out the paper later so much easier. Now fold back the fabric for 2. If you want, you can glue it in place with a little bit of your fabric glue pen. You carry on with a segment just like you did before. Now you fold back the sewing line between 2 and 3. Cut back the seam allowance to 1/4 inch. Use your rotary cutter. And again, use the fabric for 3. Right sides together, align the edges of the seam allowance and sew all the way through the line between 2 and 3. In this case, it's actually the line between 1 and 3, which means your next part that will be covered with fabric is number 3. Fold back the fabric for 3. Finger press or press with an iron. I like to use the iron all the time, and if possible I like to use a tailor's clapper to get real nice and flat seams. Now you carry on with the next seam, which will be the seam for number 4. Again, use your postcard, fold back number 4, cut back the seam allowance, and align the raw edges of your seam allowance with the fabric for number 4. Again, sew all the way through. Fold back the fabric, finger press, or you can use your iron and a little bit of glue to glue the fabric in place. Once you're done with your segment, cut off the excess fabric all the way around along the seam allowance. The dotted line is the seam allowance. And here we go. The first part of your quilt block is done.